Hey, welcome back, everybody. So today we are going to we're going to go over a topic again that constantly confused me when I was first learning how to code. And I know when I've talked to other people, they're trying to learn to code on the platform, they are studying for their PD1 exam, what have you. It's still a source of confusion, and it's just syntax. And syntax, I always say when you're starting off as a developer, don't be intimidated by syntax. It's largely muscle memory, and after 6 months, it's probably the easiest part of programming. But it's syntax, and if syntax is just the grammar that you have to use for your programming language. So really today, we're just going to kind of dive into some Apex syntax around how we declare methods. All that public, static, void stuff that is largely boilerplate, and it's I remember the first time I saw it on Trailhead or something, and I just was like, oh my God, what is this? And I started trying to learn Java, and it was still confusing because I felt like every class I took, everybody kind of took it for granted that you would just get this. And I didn't get it, right? It took me a while to really wrap my head around it. So I've tried to, and I get how frustrating it is, so I've tried to touch on it in other videos. But today, all we're going to do is we are going to talk about the syntax around declaring a method and when is something public, when is it private, when is it void. We're going to use some really simple examples, and I hope this is all going to make sense to everybody. So that said, hey, we are going to jump in here. I'm going to switch over to IntelliJ, Illuminated Cloud. And first off, I'm going to create a new class. Oh, I do not want to delete my class folder. I just want to create a new one. Apex class. We're going to create a car class. And first, I'm just going to say, I feel like every kind of object-oriented programming course out there that I've ever been around, right, starts off with you're either making cars or animals, which would lead you to think as a developer you spend way more time working on programming cars. Which is not the case, but I think it's a kind of it's an accessible concept. Everybody kind of gets it, like a car or a pet. So we're going to use that today to try to just illustrate some examples. So first we're going to start, we just have a class. And a class at a high level, it's a way to kind of organize concepts in your code. The real more computer science definition is a class is a set of instructions for creating an object. And classes have a couple things. They have properties and they have methods. Properties are things a class knows, and methods are things that a class can do. So this one, and like I said, this is going to be real simple. We're going to give our car class a couple properties. We're not going to do any constructors. We're not going to do any encapsulations. If you're watching this and you're a more advanced developer and you're going to tell me that it's a bad way to do this, because you're right, but we're just doing a real simple example here. So we are going to make these methods, we're going to make them public because I want other code to be able to access them right now. I'm going to do a string, and I'm going to just call it name. That's going to be the name. And right now, I'm just going to give these, I'm going to predefine these. I'm just going to say, I'm going to call this we'll call it a truck. All right, it's our truck. That doesn't even make sense. I'm just going to call it, I'm really getting stuck on naming this. These things are so hard. So we're just going to say, it's a junker. It's a junker. Okay. Public. What else does a car have to know about itself? Car would need to know how fast it's going. Current speed. And we are going to set that equal to 0. And public integer. This car also has, I'm going to say, a top speed, a max speed. And we are going to set that equal to 100. And so this car right now, our car class, if I was to instantiate it, and we'll show that, create a new one, would know 3 things about itself. It would know its name, it would know its current speed, and its max speed, because we already just defined those. We gave them default values inside the class. So just real quick, and this is, we haven't even gotten to our method syntax yet. I'm going to deploy this up. We're going to open up our anonymous Apex window. And well, let's see, I was actually playing around with something like this earlier. So name, and just going to run it. All right, so you could see, so when I created, I used my car class. I named it my car, and then I instantiated it. And that's just when we use a class to create an object. So I created a my car object based on the car class. I used the new keyword, and this is how the computer science instantiate a instance of the car class is with the new keyword. And then the name of the class, and I'm just empty parentheses right now, semicolon. And that lets us access the car properties with dot notation, right? So mycar.name, mycar.maxspeed, put them in a debug log, and you can see down here we got back junker, and we got back 100 miles. Okay, so that's just down and as simple as we could. That is a class with a couple properties. Now we have to give it some methods, which is the whole reason we came here. Everything we're going to talk about today, right? So methods have a couple, I'm going to call them access modifiers. And the ones we're going to worry about today are public and private. There's also a couple others. I would suggest go read the documentation, like global. You really don't ever need to worry about global unless you're writing code in its own namespace. So everything we're going to do today, and frankly, I'm going to say 90% of what you'll ever do as a developer is going to use public and private modifiers. So we're going to create our first method. And remember, a method is a thing the car can do. So I think we want our car to be able to accelerate, right? We want it to be able to go faster. So I'm going to make that public. And it is, and if you remember, best way I can explain this, you remember an earlier video I did about static versus instance methods. This is an instance method because we actually have to have created a car to tell it to go faster. So we are going to, public, void, because this is not going to return anything. And I'll show you what and then increase speed. We're just going to name it increase speed. And integer. We just call it speed. All right. And what this method is going to do is it's just going to, let's say it's going to take our current speed and it's going to add the speed parameter on. So if we pass in 10, our current speed would be 10 miles an hour. And I think we also want a car that can slow down, all right? So public, and we're going to make it void again. It's right now, neither of these methods are going to return anything. Decrease speed, integer speed, and we're going to say current speed minus equals speed. All right. Whatever we pass in, we are going to subtract that from speed. Let's compile this. So you can see now we have two methods, public, void, decrease and increase speed. They are both instance methods, meaning we have to create a car object to be able to use these. So I'm saying if I go back to version control, anonymous Apex, and we're going to get rid of, okay, so we're doing it again. We're going to car, my car equals new car. So we're going to set the my car equal to an instance of the class of the car object. So it is or the car class. So it is my car is a car object. Then we want my car increase speed 10. And then let's just get the current speed from my car. See what we get. Okay, so you can see we did. We increased our speed. We put in, say we were going 0. We said speed up 10 miles an hour. The current speed is now 10. So let's say we're going to change that. Let's say we're going to increase, just to prove us, we're going to increase our speed by 20. Then we are going to, let's say now we want to slow down, decrease speed by 5. And we're going to do another system debug. Final speed equals my car.current speed. Okay, so you can see, we print these out in our debug statements. We increased to 20. Then we said decrease our speed on my car by 5, and our final speed was 15. So if we go back to the code we wrote, right, those are those two methods. The methods are modifying, in this case, the properties of the car class. Now, let's say we want, I'm going to add another thing in. So we are going to do public integer and we're going to say, I'm trying to think of what I want to call fuel level. How much fuel do we have in the tank? And we're going to default it to 10. All right, we hold 10 gallons. And now let's say we had another method, public void. We're going to make it void, or no longer, because this is going to return something. It's going to return an integer. We're going to call it get fuel level. And this is going to return our fuel level. So first, anytime if you put a return, so these two, it's not that they don't do anything. They do. They are modifying the speed. A method can do all kinds of stuff and be void. But in this case, it's giving something back. And I'll show this from Anonymous Apex. But because it's giving something back, it's returning an integer value, it is no longer void. You have to put a return type in there. So in another piece of Apex code, something else calls this method. They call get fuel level. It's going to return the current amount of gas in the tank. Go back to Anonymous Apex. And we're just going to keep using the car object that we already created. But, up first we got to compile our code, which we did not do yet. Okay, so now because that returns, remember our method returned an integer. So we're going to say integer current fuel equals my car dot get fuel level. We're going to do, and we're going to run that. In fact, we're going to, before we do that, we're going to want to put our current fuel in a debug statement so we can see the results. Okay, so you can see that returned the fuel. And it could do that because this was not void. We were saying this, when somebody calls this method, it's going to return an integer. If we tried to do integer, let's call it speed equals my car dot increase speed. So first, my editor's just throwing, Illuminated Cloud's throwing a red light, say, hey, this is illegal, right? You can't even do this. And if we try to run it, we'll get another error. Because you say you cannot assign that's a void method, right? You cannot assign something that's void to an integer. And you know what? Let's run it, see what happens. Compile failure. Method does not exist or incorrect signature. And that's something you'll see from time to time when you're running your code. If you are trying to get a value out of something that you have declared void, and that's all void means. Void does not mean it doesn't do anything. Void can it can do DML. It could update the database. It just does not return some sort of value back to whatever client code called it. That's it. Okay, so now let's say we want to do one last thing. We've got our increase speed and our decrease speed methods. Let's say we want to do something. We want to make sure that you can't, because we set that max speed up there, right? We want to make sure that you can't go faster than that. But you know what? I'm going to space these out because it bothers me. I like to have a space between all my methods. But I don't want code outside of my car object, outside of my car class, to be able to access this method. So we're going to make it private. And again, it's going to be void because it's not going to return anything. We're going to call it check speed. And you know what? We want, sorry about that. Make you all dizzy. So this is going to take a speed, an integer 2 as a parameter. And what we want to do, let's say, I'll put inside an if statement. If current speed plus speed is greater than or equal to max speed. All right, so we're saying, like, if we're going 90, if we already have a speed of 90 and we say increase by 20, if it is greater than or equal to the max speed value for this car, we are just going to, current speed is going to equal max speed. And we're going to do system.debug. I've got to escape my... There we go. You can't go any faster. So let's... And then we are just going to... We're going to break out of that. So first we're going to... So what we want to do is we're going to call check speed. So first, when we call the increase speed method, right? So the increase speed method is then going to call down here to check speed, to check this condition, and make sure we don't go faster. So I don't need code outside of my car class, my car object, being able to access this. It's an internal method that I only want the car itself to be able to use. So unlike these two that are public, so other people can use that code to access the car, this is internal. So get rid of that. And we're going to, let's just do my car. Increase speed 110. Let's see what happens. Make sure I actually even wrote that right. Whoop. I mean, I didn't do anything to give us a result back. All right, so we actually did something, you know what? System.debug, we don't want that return in there. Trying to, let's make this work. All right, so we're actually just going to assign speed down here. And else we'll just say, and then we'll actually do this from this point. All right. Let's run that again. Yep, so there we go. Because we checked this, it checked. So in that case, just like I said, the increase speed method called down here to check speed, and we went into that condition, said you can't go any faster. Let's go back to, we'll set it to 90. Okay. Now, test it one more time. There goes Alexa telling me probably Amazon folks left something in my driveway. Increase speed, and we're going to increase by 20. That should push us over and should give us a message to the debug log. There we go. Exactly what we wanted. So this is an example of, we have kind of everything here. So we have some properties, things that our car class knows, a car object knows, and we have our methods, things that it can do. It can increase speed, it can decrease speed, it can check its fuel level and return that back. So if somebody calls get fuel level, they will get an integer in return. These are void because they don't return anything. They do stuff, but they don't send a value back. And last, we have a private check speed, which is, again, it's going to do stuff, but code outside, we couldn't, if we went back to our anonymous Apex window, I can't access check speed. I won't even see that it exists in my editor because it's private. So only my increase speed method can access it. But in anonymous Apex, all right, so if I'll keep trying to type it. And you can see it's red. IntelliJ is illuminated clouds. Tell me what? You can't do that. We'll run it. Compiler. So that's why we would make something private. We don't want code outside of our class to be able to access it. So that's it. Those are your access modifiers. That is just the real basic. That's how we combine publics and privates and voids and statics to make the signatures, to make the syntax to declare a method. Hope this was useful. If it was, please take a second and hit like and subscribe. Really helps me out, and I'll talk to everybody later on. Thank you. Take care.